let's mention Harry. I mean, we know he's coming over in September. Would he be welcome to come to Balmoral this summer? Could you ever see that happening?
I personally don't. I think that his bridges are well and truly burnt.
Not a warm welcome at Balmoral. I can't imagine it happening. The story comes up every year.
I think it depends who's up there. I think the King has made it clear that the door will always be open for him. So I think if the King was up there on his own,
I don't think he has made it clear. I think that was a meeting between a press secretary who was escorted outside and was photographed with Harry's PR people that got what they wanted. I think the King's position at this moment in time is nothing has really changed.
I wouldn't be too sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's big enough to put. You've been to Balmoral.
Yes, I have.
There's lodges on the estate.
Absolutely.
There's Craig Owen Lodge. I mean, there's more enough to have Harry in there and have a little dinner together.
Yeah, and there's lots of cottages on the estate. So yes.
And keep William and Catherine away. And then
but you're assuming then that the King has forgiven everything and he's moving on with what happened when Harry and Meghan totally insulted his wife and insulted the country at the same time in what they've done. I think it's very difficult position for the King, but I don't think a lot has changed.
Do you think they'll be watching Meghan's new Netflix show next week? Because we will have to be talking about that in future shows. We're going to have to be watching it. You don't think we're going to be sitting around the big TV in Balmoral watching it?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I don't think an awful lot of TV will be watched in Balmoral, to be honest.
Yeah, well, most of my history is based on what I see in The Crown. They seem to love walks, barbecues,
reading as well,
reading.
Yeah, they have their books to read.
Yeah.
But I think
fishing,
painting, yeah, reading.
Oh, that sounds bliss, doesn't it? And Peter Phillips and Harriet Sperling may be there. I mean, they've just announced a couple of weeks ago. They said that they're engaged. I mean, there's plenty to talk about this summer.
Yeah, they have a nurse on hand. That'll be great.
Gosh, I wonder what sort of wedding it'll be. I worked on his last wedding to Autumn Kelly, which was fantastic. So I wonder what sort of wedding they will envisage this time round.
I would imagine one that's profitable and appears in Hello.
You cynic.
Oh, Rob.
I'm sure it's. I know I quite like Peter Phillips. I've met him a few times. I think he's charming. Well done. Glad he's
just to point out that the first wedding pictures were sold to Hello, weren't they?
They were.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
and then the engagement.
Most things that happen there are sold, but no, I quite like him. I've interviewed him. I quite like Peter Phillips.
He's charming.
Glad he's found some happiness. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, she seems lovely actually. The dealings we've had with her. You mentioned about Prince Philip, right? So, where do we stand on this? VJ Day, which we've discussed last couple of weeks, we discussed today. The King and the Queen went to the National Memorial Arboretum. It was quite an emotional event. I mean, I did VE Day, and I did D Day, and they were pretty powerful. And sometimes people forget about VJ Day. It's like the official kind of end of the war. It was the end of the
Prince Philip and all that.
Prince Philip was actually out there fighting in the Pacific when it was signed back in 1945. Prince Harry, we learned this week, has laid what his aides describe as a discreet note and a wreath paying tribute to the forgotten heroes of the Pacific War, but also to Prince Philip. Previously, he's not been allowed to leave a wreath at the cenotaph. And as I say, he didn't attend, but he got a friend to lay a wreath. Was this a PR stunt? Is this something that Harry is inextricably linked to the armed forces? He's spoken in the past about how much he admires his grandfather. Where do we sit on Harry's actions here?
Well, the reality is it was obviously a PR stunt. I think the person who laid it was the PR man. But
we don't know that for sure.
Well, the bottom line is, if you didn't want it to be a PR stunt, just leave it there, and I'm sure somebody would see it, i.e. it would get passed down to the press eventually when someone else sees it. I think it was just a little bit too slick, and it's part of an operation Rebuild Harry.
Also, I think
that's going on.
If I was advising him, and if he wanted to say something, put something out as a statement. Don't do a sort of what's perceived to be a stunt, and almost take a bit of polish off the actual main event.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And also, the King was there. As I say, I thought it was incredibly emotional.
Yes.
The whole. When the soldier stood up, the former captain, and he saluted to my brave king. I thought that was all very emotional, and only you could see the tears in Camilla's eyes.
Clearly, both of them, and the king.
And the king was really moved. I thought it was terrific and showed you what it was all about, really. And again, I think it was the king's day, but I think that the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales, given that this is probably the last time there's a significant anniversary to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of VJ Day, Prince and Princess of Wales absolutely should have been there.
Well, a cynic, and that might not be me, but a cynic might argue that Prince Harry maybe saw that as an opportunity and he was able to leave a letter there to show that he had some kind of presence at the event.
I think you're right in that. I think Harry, he had a lot of people respected Harry for the Invictus Games, for his own service. But I just don't think, as Ailsa quite rightly says, you don't need to do stunts. I can almost hear the derision coming out of the Duke of Edinburgh's mouth. So
and also using him as a sort of a tool.
Okay.
He just wouldn't like that.
No, he wouldn't. And also, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about the Duke of Edinburgh. It was about those veterans, as you rightly said, who probably won't be here for a next significant anniversary.
I think so, yeah.
So in Harry's note, I'm pretty sure he did write about the forgotten heroes, and he did thoughts about their heroics out on the front in the Pacific. But you're right to point out that it was largely about Prince Philip.
He'd hated that, Matt. He really, all the time, whenever anybody, go through any of the interviews, when they start talking about his service, this is a man who was mentioned in dispatches. Yeah. This is a very brave guy, and he fought, he hated people talking about that. He would have just said, look, there were many other people doing that. He couldn't stand people, like any true hero, somebody who'd served. It wasn't about him. It would be about his shipmates. It would be about those he served with and those who lost their lives, more importantly. It wouldn't have been about him. He would have not wanted that, not the Duke of Edinburgh. No.
And also, the king didn't talk about his father, did he?
No. The mention was, of course, was the references all to his grandfather as king. He was president of my club in and out, and the Duke of Edinburgh was just not about himself. He was, he was a serviceman. He was not about himself.
Yeah.
Well, you called it. Well, between the three of us, we've suggested it may have been a deliberate stunt. I'm surprised that you think that Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, would have been opposed to Harry writing this letter and referring to his kind of heroic.
I think, as Rob rightly said, it's not about him. It wouldn't be about Philip. It would be about all those people there on the day.
And the ones who died.
Yeah, absolutely. Serving.
We will remember them. He just wouldn't have wanted to be remembered. He would. You could always hear him saying, "Yes, I was there." Whatever. What difference does it make?
As I said originally, I just think if Prince Harry did want to pay tribute to these people, he could have put out a statement on the day, rather than going and doing something quite so graphic and sort of...
He can't really win, though, can he, Harry? I mean, he just seems to get things wrong.
But do you think, Rob, is it because he doesn't have the sort of senior level of advisors advising him what to do? He's sort of cut off in California.
I think it's because he's out now. When you're on the outside looking at him...
but where's the statesman? Where are the Lord Geitts? Where are the David Mannings? Where are these sort of big hitters?
Remember, you were there, Ailsa, how difficult it was to advise him, and the people around him used to have real trouble.
But when I was there, there were those statesmen. There were the Lord Janvrins, the Lord.
Yeah, they bring in people like David
gravitas.
Manning,
Absolutely.
People with real, with people
and experience of the
or
world.
even people like Jamie Lowther Pinkerton, who was a senior officer in the SAS.
Yeah.
And they did listen to him, and Harry did listen to him. Look, sometimes I feel a bit sorry for Harry. I think he's very much because he's on the outside. It's very much because of the things that he's done wrong.
And he's cut off, isn't he?
And he's cut himself off. But then again, he was advised by his own father to think very carefully about what he was doing, and